Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it's been a busy week, and it feels like we're only like halfway through what's going to be a busy week, which it feels like this shouldn't be a busy week, but somehow this always turns into a busy week with NFL and transfer portal and insane rumors from around college football. It's I feel like we just kind of every 3 weeks say, "Boy, I didn't expect this to be such a crazy week," but boy, it's been another crazy week, huh?
Yeah, and we've been waiting to do some listener question shows, and there's really no point yet because there's still stuff happening. And can't even get to all of the stuff happening at this point because we're just focused on Ohio State right now. So today we're going to talk about the comings and goings from the Ohio State roster and guys announcing for the NFL, guys announcing that they're staying, other guys, again, Tom, this hinting on social media. I'm done with it. I'm going to write a letter to somebody's congressman about it because it needs to end. It just one way or another, come out and say it. So we're still waiting word. And I guess right now, let's just say who's announced what, and then who hasn't yet announced. So far announcing that they're leaving for the NFL. Paris Johnson, Luke Whippler, DeJuan Jones, Tanner McAllister. Obviously, Tanner McAllister, DeJuan Jones would have had to come back for a COVID year. Staying are Matt Jones, Cade Stover, and hinting in somebody else's like Instagram post or story, Xavier Johnson. Again, I'm not a fan of the hinting. We're still waiting on CJ Stroud, Tommy Eichenberg, Josh Proctor, guys like that. Mainly still waiting on just CJ Stroud and Tommy Eichenberg. And I would expect probably 15 minutes after we get done recording, CJ Stroud will announce something. I still don't know that Tommy Eichenberg is going to announce anything based on who he is. And I was looking to see, does he even have Twitter? And I saw he's got a locked account. So I don't know when the last time that may have been like, I'm an 11th grader in high school. I'm going to start my Twitter account. And I wouldn't be surprised if his first post, the only post, is still like, this is my Twitter account, something like that, and hasn't tweeted since. But so that's where we are in terms of the roster. And I guess the biggest news of that is the biggest surprise in Luke Whippler announcing that he is leaving after just his redshirt sophomore season. I think obviously the hope was, he's going to come back. It's so early for a center to leave. And now you have to imagine a world where what do they do without Luke Whippler? And how much was the staff caught off guard by this? This is kind of him leaving is more of an issue almost than, or could be more of an issue than Paris Johnson leaving, because you knew Paris Johnson was going to leave. Doesn't mean you have an answer, but I don't think they expected to lose Luke Whippler this year.
No, and this is also a position where they're not real deep. I mean, if you kind of look, they can say whatever they want to say, but I think you look at the way the rotation went on the offensive line, and it feels like they had 7 guys they were okay with playing in meaningful snaps last year. It was the 5 starters. It was Josh Fryer, who they played in that Buffalo package and who sort of stepped in a couple times. And it was Enoch Vamahi, who came in, and when Matt Jones was banged up at the start of the Michigan game, Enoch Vamahi started the Michigan game. And, I beyond that, I don't know that there's anyone that they really, truly felt comfortable playing in a big moment next year. And now you've lost 3 of those guys. And, if it was just Paris Johnson and it was just DeJuan Jones, those are really crucial pieces, and you don't want to replace both tackles in 1 year. But at least you would have 5 guys, and you can sort of shuffle guys, and maybe you kick Donovan Jackson out to left tackle and Josh Fryer out to right tackle. And then you've got 5 guys if Luke Whippler stays, and you can kind of make it work. And then, you want to develop some depth behind them with young guys or transfer portal guys or whatever, but you can kind of make it work. Now you have 4 guys you trust. And that's a significant problem. That's a lot more pressure on the portal and or development because, Tony, rather famously, you need 5 starting offensive linemen. That is how the game of football is designed. And if you have only 4, well, you'd better find a 5th, and then you better hope no one gets hurt, or you better find a 6th or a 7th.
You know how the A11 is eventually going to change the sport when you've got 2 quarterbacks lined up? I think like a 4-man front, and then you've got another offensive lineman lined up somewhere out by the numbers. Something like that. It doesn't have to be the biggest guy, a more mobile guy. Maybe that's what Ohio State can do next year. Completely change the game. Nobody will be ready for it until probably like November or the playoffs. You'll see enough of it. It's like, okay, we don't need to throw a defensive tackle out there at the numbers. We could probably put like a linebacker or a big safety out there and deal with that. But the departure of Luke Whippler, which again, I believe if I did the math on this correctly off the top of my head, he and Paris Johnson are the 3rd and 4th third-year players, third-year offensive linemen to leave Ohio State early in the last like 25 years. Orlando Pace, Michael Jordan, Paris Johnson, Luke Whippler. I think that's about it. And I don't think for one, they probably expected to lose Paris Johnson after 3 years. There's no way they expected to lose Luke Whippler after 3 years. And so him leaving made getting Matt Jones back so much more important. Like the idea that you can just slide Matt Jones to center that's a quick fix, but it just provides a semblance of normalcy, 20% of the normalcy that they had, or 40% of the normalcy that they had this year if you get Matt Jones and Donovan Jackson back. But imagine where this line would be if Matt Jones also was like, you know what, I'm going somewhere else. And now you just return Donovan Jackson. And what do you do with all of this now? Because like Matt Jones, you could see him, he's either going to be a guard, he's going to be a center. So you've got an answer there. But if they did not get him back, this is bordering on disaster movie types of situations. Like the entire Earth's crust is cracking open as Matt Jones goes somewhere else.
You wonder how bad it could be. Like, how bad could an offense be with really good 5-star talent everywhere other than the line? Like, you have seen teams with bad offensive lines, and it's like, what is this offense just not, why can't they stop tripping over their own feet? And it's because the offensive line is a problem. And yeah, without Matt Jones, then it's Enoch Famahi, Josh Fryer, Donovan Jackson, and 2 question marks. And at that point, you wonder, I have had this theory on the NIL thing that when NIL becomes an issue, Ohio State will sort of figure out a way to solve it. The NIL collectives in Ohio State will sort of, the desperation will translate into, hey, now the money's coming in. Because you look at the programs that have really thrown a ton of money at it, it's the programs that are trying to get back to the elite spot, and that have fallen below that level. In Miami and Texas A&M and Tennessee and Texas and schools like that, where they're not really at that level. And then you have the schools like Georgia who are right at the tippy top of the sport or have won national championships recently. They've been able to sort of sustain that as everyone wants to be part of a winner. And Alabama has maybe taken like a half step back, and then that's gotten their people all riled up. Well, Ohio State's just sort of been in this like stasis where maybe it's gotten a little complacent or something like that. And you wonder if this is a real emergency on the offensive line. If they had lost Matt Jones, if that's enough to get people to sort of, jump and start throwing a lot of money at the problem. And, then the question is, even if you do that, does that give you the solution you're looking for, or does that just bring in people and it doesn't necessarily solve the problem?
Well, and we've seen a bunch of movement already this year in the transfer portal. And one school of thought is this is the time to get those guys because these are the guys looking for a step up. Whereas after spring, those are the guys that are have found like they have been overtaken in the depth chart. Those are the guys that hit the portal in the spring because they have no job. However, I do think there's going to be an opportunity here for Ohio State in the portal because there are jobs open on this offensive line. And even if it doesn't happen this winter, and I don't think it's going to be happening in the next, 4, 5, 6 days while the window is open, I do think you'll have some good players from other schools look, or somebody will reach out to somebody. I don't know who. I don't know what person from what collective or what, carrier pigeon from this particular area of the country will reach out and say, yeah, you're doing fantastic, all SEC at Missouri, but you can come to Ohio State and we can't promise you you're going to start, but here's who you're competing against. And they have 7 snaps in their career. You're a 3-year starter. Do you want to start for Ohio State? Do you want to win? Do you want to compete for a conference championship? Do you want to compete for a national championship? I think you'll have situations there where the idea of playing at Ohio State is going to be enticing for guys who weren't even thinking necessarily about being in the portal. I think some players can be convinced to look at the portal, but can they be convinced to get in with the sole purpose of going to Ohio State?
It does feel like, the opportunity to sort of chase a championship. It's like, a free agent and, pick whatever pro sport you want. You got the guys who are going to go chase the money, and you've got the guys who are going to go chase a championship. And realistically, there are only like a handful of schools that have a real chance at a national championship. I know USC is picking up a lot of guys, but do you think USC is actually going to have the horses, the depth, the defense, the defensive coordinator to compete for a national championship next year? Because I sure don't. And I'm sure they're selling that, but it feels like I know exactly how and when that's going to fall apart. So, outside of Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and then, you want to lump Michigan in that group, okay. You want to lump LSU in that group, okay. Tennessee, whatever teams you want to lump in that group.
Are you taking Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, or the field?
Oh, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah.
Give me those 3, and you can have the other 128 teams in FBS in terms of who wins the national championship next year. And that's just a function of roster depth, talent, and coaching and development, all that kind of stuff. But there's just you see what happens when the scrappy underdog. Boy, look at all the heart we've shown. You can't measure heart, Tony. You can't. TCU, yes, they were as likely to have gone 6-6 as they were 12-0 this year in terms of outcomes and win probability in individual games. But Tony, you can't measure heart. You can, however, measure scores, and 65-7 is a very specific measurement of a score. And I don't think Ohio State would have beaten TCU 65-7, but also I don't think Ohio State would have been sweating much in the fourth quarter against TCU either, because you run into a talent issue, and that's just the teams hit that glass ceiling, and that has been the issue for every Big 12 team in the playoff ever, except for the one year that Oklahoma gave Georgia a run in 2017, was the 2017 season, I think. And then the, TCU beating Michigan this year, which, that should maybe be prompting a little bit of an existential crisis at Michigan about, you got the first round bye against the Big 12 team and you still lost. Like that I think is a concern for Michigan. But you see the Big 12 teams going up against the SEC teams, and it always pretty much looks the same. And I don't see any reason to think that that's going to change. Like, oh, well, Tony, Texas has a 5-star quarterback now. So now it's all different, Tony. Tony, it's all different. That's all they've been missing is a ballyhooed Texas high school quarterback star. It's all going to fall into place now, unless it doesn't. Spoiler alert, it won't.
Oh, but Tom, it's January. It's still early. Is it too soon to write off Texas?
Well, you're going to have the full Texas is back hype cycle coming this year. So there will be lots of people who do not think it is too early to write off Texas. But, I don't want to spoil the surprise. But you're going to hear a lot of people excited about Florida State this year too. Probably not going to happen. So I don't want to, rain on anyone's parade here, but it feels like you can kind of sell yourself on whatever this time of year, but then you look at the results and it's like, well, how many teams have really gotten to that level? And it's all line play. It's all, you've got to have, you need to have the skill, talent and all that too, but it's all line play. It's Ohio State had a very good offensive line this year, and that got them there. They had a very good defensive line this year. That got them to the level where they could have won a national championship. Same for Georgia, same for Alabama, same for LSU a couple of years ago. Like, yeah, you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, all that, but you've also got really good line play. And that's just, there is a gap between that level of line play and the level of line play you see at TCU or Oklahoma or USC or Texas or Miami or Florida State. And that's just not something you're going to overcome.
Now, I hear you saying Florida State is not going to be any good. Now, I believe, was it Dino Babers who had finished with the Florida State ahead of Ohio State in his coach's poll in his final ballot? So,
yeah, he had Ohio State 7th, which was a choice you could make. He had one of the, Saban had Alabama 2nd in his coach's poll ballot, which I thought was, whatever. Like, you live your life and live your dream. But I think on a pure talent perspective, yes, you could. I think there's an argument that Alabama was the second most talented team. It's a real shame they lost to two teams that were not as talented as them, but they did. So the structures of the college football playoff say if you lose 2 games, you're probably not making the college football playoff. So sorry about that. And yeah, I think Dino Babers had Ohio State 7th. I think they were behind Florida State on his ballot. John Wilner from the Bay Area News Group, his ballot is always just performance art. He had Tennessee 2nd, which is like, he always does a weird ballot, I think just for the sake of doing a weird ballot, but
he's the reason you have 80 other voters.
Yeah. He had Tennessee 2nd, and it's like, okay, well, you could make the argument that they were only not 2nd because they lost Hendon Hooker, except they were also down like 24 points to South Carolina before Hendon Hooker got hurt. So, like, that feels like a rather significant logical flaw there. So, yeah, whatever. Like, individual ballots are stupid. Tony, I don't want to spoil the big surprise here, but polling is kind of stupid because everyone has their own little biases baked in and different ways, and there's no real actual, stuff that you're specifically supposed to be weighing. It's just kind of like, who's the best? It's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, who's the best? Well, what does that mean? It means who's the best. Like, well, okay.
Well, and trying to come up with 2, 3, 4 this year after this season it's an impossibility. Because you have Michigan losing to TCU getting destroyed by Georgia, should never be number 2, but Ohio State losing to Michigan earlier. Like, there's just this little round robin of ineptitude that, you know what? Let's just crown Georgia champs and move on.
Ohio State had a transitive loss to Ohio State of about 63 points. So do with that what you will.
Undefeated? Defeated. I don't know. But getting back to Ohio State, so Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones both announced that they were leaving. I wonder how much, because Paris announced first, and I wonder if there's any like, DeJuan, come play left tackle. Come play left tackle. Show the NFL that you can do this. You will move from a possible like late first, early second, and that's the high side right now, to if you show that you can play left tackle, you're talking maybe a top 10, top 15 pick like Paris Johnson. But, after, even before this, talking with DeJuan Jones after the Michigan game and when Ohio State was announced for the playoffs, he was talking about how he thought he was done. Like, I thought my Ohio State career was over. So he was already ready to go. And of course, he's a four-year senior and didn't redshirt, would have had to use this COVID year, but neither of those guys are a surprise. What does Ohio State do without them? I think we all believe, and this may be the most of all of the unsure things, Josh Fryer at right tackle might be the most sure thing. So that's done. Left tackle, we'll talk about this for months now, but Donovan Jackson, Zen Michalski, I think, are those the two guys competing for that spot? And do you let Zen Michalski take the majority of those snaps in the spring? Keep Donovan Jackson at guard. Try to allow Zen Michalski to take this job, win this job, knowing that if he doesn't, you've got enough time in the fall for Donovan Jackson to earn that job?
I think you probably rotate those guys and you just sort of see, because, you know, if Donovan Jackson's going to take the left tackle job, you got to figure out who your left guard's going to be. So you're going to have to try some other guys there. And, you know, is that, I mean, you can kind of go through the depth chart and fill in whatever name you want there. There are a lot of guys who I think you kind of got to see, like that. There are a lot of those kind of 2020 offensive line guys, even 2021 offensive line guys who have not really done anything and have not ever really made a serious push for playing time. And you're sort of getting to either do it or you don't kind of time with a lot of those guys. None of them have transferred out during this window, and there's still a few days left. But if they don't, then I think the whole point is you're going to go through spring ball and see where you stand. So you see what you got with those guys. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, and you move on with your life. But I think you've got to try as many different guys there as you can. If you don't have someone else you're bringing in for the spring, you know, you're not bringing in someone from the portal. You're not bringing in someone from, the February signing day, which it doesn't sound super likely that they are. Then you kind of got to just try what you got and figure out, because this is, as always, this is the five best. Who are the five best? And is the five best then Michalski and Donovan Jackson and Matt Jones and Enoch Vermahi and Josh Fryer? Okay, then that's fine. If the five best is Donovan Jackson playing at left tackle, you know, there are people who think he's more, because of his agility and his athleticism, that he might be better fit as a tackle than a guard, even though he's a little bit undersized as a tackle. That's a thing that, you know, smart people will say that to you, and I think you got to take that kind of into consideration as well. So I think you got to just kind of try a bunch of different stuff this spring and just assume that you're not necessarily going to know practice 5. This is who our starting offensive line is going to be. You know, practice 5 of the spring. Like, you know, this year we essentially went into spring saying, I think this is what the offensive line is going to be, and that's essentially what it was last year. You know, I don't think there was a lot of movement on the offensive line after a few practices of the spring. This year, I think you're going to just have to sort of assume you're going to just kind of plug and play a bunch of guys in a bunch of different spots, and then you really got to know what you have coming out of spring, because then you're going to have guys making a decision on do I stay or do I go, and then you can make a decision on how badly do I need to pursue whichever other folks at whichever other positions, you know, might potentially enter the portal after the spring.
Well, the key to a successful and dominating season, Tom, you said it, and just try a bunch of different things in the spring. See what you got, because I mean that's pretty scary for a program like Ohio State, you're supposed to know what's waiting in the wings, and I think the scary part is they do know.
That's how I'm looking at things, and you know, I think when you're a 2020 offensive lineman, they've had a lot of opportunity to look at you. You've had a couple springs, even after the COVID year. You've had a couple springs. You've had a couple fall camps. You've had a couple seasons. You played on the, practice squad, all that. But I mean, man, if they know what they have there and they don't feel like they have what they need, well, that's a pretty big problem, and that just tells you really need to be going out and pursuing things. I think it's more of a question, more so with some of the younger guys, you know, the 2022 signees, you know, Carson Hinsman. What do they have in Carson Hinsman? They may think they know, they may have some sense what they think he's going to be, but you know, that first year of play to your second year of play, you're going to take some leaps. Zen Michalski, he's had 2 years now, so 2 years, second year to third year, a lot of times that's where guys will take a leap. So, you know, the 21s, the 22s, I think that's where maybe you're going to have a better chance of finding a potential solution there.
Because when I'm doing a running two deep on the Buckeye Huddle message board, of anytime somebody leaves, I just readjust it. And right now, I've got Tager Shabola as a starting left guard because I have Donovan Jackson kicked out. And Tager Shabola, the reason I have him there is because he played more than any other freshman last year, freshman offensive line. Enoch Vamahi, I've got at right guard because Matt Jones sliding into center. And it's a nice idea, but there's still a long time before any of that takes shape. I still think this theory that offensive linemen from around the country are going to see an opportunity. They're going to be told about the opportunity. I don't know how they're going to be told about this opportunity. Probably listening to this podcast. But they're going to know there's opportunities to come in and start and compete for a championship. And I still think you'll see something happen. And I wonder how many guys out there are like Jonah Jackson, just finishing up the degree in the spring and then jumping in the portal. So we'll see where he is, where that is after the spring. Tanner McAllister announces he's leaving. That's not a big surprise. He was a graduate fifth-year guy. So now Ohio State needs a new starting nickelback. Cam Martinez was the backup. He is back. Jihad Carter, the transfer portal transfer from Syracuse. Sorry, Tom. A guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, can play anywhere in the secondary. Apparently played most of his snaps in the slot. So I think those two guys, one of those guys has to win that job, right?
I think it would be very surprising if one of those two guys didn't win that job. And, having Carter there is certainly good insurance, if nothing else. But if you were a 3-year starter at Syracuse and you were a honorable mention All ACC, that's a similar kind of CV to what Tanner McAllister came in with. And, obviously Jihad Carter has not played under Jim Knowles the way McAllister had, but that feels like you're really kind of putting a floor under what that nickel position is this year. I don't know that you're going to get first team All-American season out of him, but you don't really need you just need a good, solid guy who, if one guy gets hurt, you have another option there. I mean, that just feels like you're just kind of shoring up, providing yourself some insurance. And whether it's him starting, whether it's Cam Martinez starting, you're going to have someone who is capable there. And, that's certainly a good thing. I was just scrolling through the 2021 recruiting class to make sure I was not forgetting any offensive linemen in that class. Tony, pop quiz. How many members of Ohio State's 2021 recruiting class were rated higher than Marvin Harrison in the 2-4-7 composite? I will give you one moment to think about the answer. And Tony, I will give you a clue. The answer is a bigger number than it should be because it is bigger than 0.
Well, and I'm just trying to think of who the members of that class are. Like Ben Crispin, he would be one of them.
Well, he was a member of that class. I believe he ended up lower than.
Oh, really?
Yes, he ended up ranked 124th. So he and Jaden Ballard are two guys who were directly behind Marvin Harrison.
Here's the crazy thing is I'm trying to think. I can't even think of the guys because you're talking about who are the rising. So they would have been redshirt freshmen this year. So that's not Zen Mahalski. That is.
Zen Mahalski was in that class, but
right,
he was further back. Yes,
exactly. Like he wasn't in the top 100 or so. Donovan Jackson. That's one. I honestly, if I go look at my two deep, maybe, but go ahead, give it to me.
The number is 12. There were 12 members of Ohio State's.
I thought you just said offensive lineman. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. 12 members of Ohio State's recruiting class.
I would have gotten that.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have. Quinn Ewers, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Ibuka, Donovan Jackson, Travion Henderson, Kyle McCord, J.K. Johnson, Michael Hall Jr., Jordan Hancock, Evan Pryor, Reed Carrico, the 12 members of the 2021 recruiting class, ranked higher than Marvin Harrison Jr. Everybody take a lap. That was a miss. That was a miss.
You don't know that yet.
Yeah, I mean, they did have him top 100. 14th in his position in the nation. I'm going to click on the 14th in the position right now, and we're going to see how many how many wide receivers they would take ahead of Marvin Harrison right now. Number 1, Emeka Egbuka. He turned out pretty well. Number 2, Ja'Cory Brooks at Alabama. Number 3, Troy Franklin at Oregon. Number 4, Mario Williams at Oklahoma. Number 5, Aji Hall from Alabama. Number 6, JoJo Earl from Alabama. Number 7, Dante Thornton from Oregon. Number 8, Xavier Worthy from Texas. Number 9, Deion Smith from LSU. Number 10, Christian Leary from Alabama. Alabama, 4 wide receivers in one class ranked ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. Man, they must have had an incredible year this year, huh? Number 11, Chris Hilton from LSU. Number 12, Bo Collins from Clemson. Number 13, Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. Boy, Tony, I got to say, I am not sure I would take more than 0 of those guys ahead of Marvin Harrison right now. Your thoughts?
I'm pretty sure I would take less than 1 of those guys. And there are already some of those guys in the transfer portal. Wow. Yeah.
There are guys that had very good career. I mean, Emeka Egbuka had 1,000-yard season this year. Like this, he is.
Are they the only 2,000-yard guys in that? I mean, Xavier Worthy, maybe,
but
that's not what the show is about. We can figure that out later. But
yeah, it's Marvin Harrison, good at football, exclusive, must
breaking. Yes. Well, look at you. We don't normally break news on this show, but first for everything. So let's talk about some guys who are returning. Cade Stover returns. This is another one, along with Matt Jones. What in the world would you do without him? Because now having him back, you talk about the floor. The floor is very high now. Like you've got this, and now the thing is finding the second tight end. It had been much more difficult to find the first tight end and the second tight end. And now with Cade Stover back, let's go back 10 months and all of the good things we were hearing about Joe Royer, and he could be stepping up as that number 2 guy. I think he will be that. He can do that same thing next year, and I bet you'll hear more about him as he gets through his injuries and the issues he was having this past season. He's a guy that I think can emerge. But just having Cade Stover back, and he'll be a year better. I know. Oh, he's terrible blocker. He's this. He's that. He's this. He's a starting tight end for 1 year, and now this is his second year. And now I think you'll see him blossom. Oh, but he can't catch again. He was a linebacker, a defensive end, a blocking tight end, and this past year, a pass-catching tight end. And he still caught the most passes for an Ohio State tight end since, I think, Ricky Dudley in 1995. So let's give the man a little bit of credit as you also tear him down, and we tear him down. But yes, he does need to play better. I expect he will, because now you're also another year more experienced. You've seen it all. It's the contract year. Every motivation for wanting to be better, because you weren't good enough this past year, so you're going to want to be better, but also the natural growth and maturation. New coach, we'll see how that helps. I do wonder how much a full-time tight end coach with Keenan Bailey, who isn't distracted with this offensive coordination, or how much is Keenan Bailey going to be working with the offensive line like Kevin Wilson had to? I think you'll see the position continue to blossom. I dare say, Tom, 2023, the year of the tight end.
Yes, there it is. There it is. Yes, I don't know how it couldn't be, frankly. You've got all the pieces there, and Ohio State's wide receiver unit probably not going to be that good. They're going to have a lot of balls to throw to the tight end. So, 80 catches, 90 catches. Anything's possible here. We don't want to oversell it, but something in the 75 range, maybe. We'll see. We'll see how the season plays out. But no, you look at Cade Stover, and remember, 1 year and 2 weeks ago, he was playing linebacker in the Rose Bowl. So now he's had 1 full year of tight end under his belt. Now he has another, he did 4 years earlier than that or whatever it was. But you bounce around as much as he has. I think 2 years in a row at the same position group is going to be a very good thing for him. And he's also, coming back healthy. He was not wearing the big brace around his arm as a fashion accessory. That was, he was not 100% towards the end of the year. If he's back to 100%, if he's got another year under his belt, a year with a dedicated position coach who's not also trying to run the offense and all that. I think all of that kind of adds up to me to this should be a very good year for Cade Stover, a significant step forward kind of year for Cade Stover. And then after that, whether it's Joe Royer or Sam Hart or Bennett Christian or Jelani Thurman, you only need one other guy. And the name that I didn't say there, who, if you're trying to replace the Mitch Rossi role, Zach Herbstreit is a name that I think he played about 4 snaps this season, but he's the guy on the roster who might fit that Mitch Rossi type role, the fullback type blocker guy. So maybe he has a bigger role in there. You only really need to hit on one of those other guys. You don't need to hit on all of them. You don't need 6 tight ends. You need 2. And, you've got enough other options there and enough other options that I think they're pretty high on. I think, those guys, they're generally fairly high on Bennett Christian, for example. You've heard very positive things about Joe Royer. Jelani Thurman coming in this year. You just look at Jelani Thurman. He's a different type of tight end than they've had before. I don't think I've actually said G. Scott's name. G. Scott's in that mix too. I mean, there's a lot of different guys in that mix, and they all kind of bring some different things. And they kind of pieced together a tight end unit this year with different guys with different skill sets. It feels like you've got all those skill sets potentially back next year, and now you just got to sort of piece it together again.
One name that I've seen floated by Ross Fulton, who floated it from somebody else on the board, I think Chip Trainum as a fullback type in that role. That something, he wants to play. Maybe you find a role for him there. But if you're looking for that sort of guy and you want that fullback in there, obviously he's got some experience playing in the backfield, but something else to keep in mind.
Tony, you just said we don't break news on this podcast very often. We have breaking news, Tony. Ian Rappaport, sources, the #Bears, Tony, are expected to name Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren as their new president and CEO, a major hire for the organization and for Warren, who spent time in the NFL prior to college football as a top executive for the #Vikings. Tony, as a Big Ten adjacent person and a Bears fan, your thoughts?
Here's my thoughts. When the Bears drafted Justin Fields, I was thrilled because got to watch Justin Fields up close, saw how good he was, how good he could be, and the Bears have long been after a franchise quarterback that would stay with them for 10 years. And then when this Kevin Warren stuff was rumored a few weeks back, and now that it looks like it's about to be official, I'm reminded of the 2020 season, Tom, when Justin Fields spoke out repeatedly against Kevin Warren and the Big Ten's decision to cancel this season, and how he fought and got petitions and did all of this in order to just be able to play college football in 2020. And now I wonder, clearly Kevin Warren does not have a good feel, the legacy is not there in college football. I'm sure he doesn't look fondly upon his time with the Big Ten. And I wonder if one of those reasons is Justin Fields. And now the Chicago Bears sitting with the number 1 draft pick in the 2023 NFL draft. I think, Tom, is it crazy to say that he only took this job to sabotage Justin Fields, trade him away, or perhaps even draft somebody as a quarterback and keep Justin Fields and then sit him on the bench? Remember when Al Davis did this with Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson? Al Davis kept Marcus Allen on the bench. I think Kevin Warren, the only reason he has taken this job is to spite Justin Fields.
Yeah, what a punishment that would be. Oh, no, don't make me not play football for the Bears. You know what I hate? Competent offensive lines, skill talent. Don't know, please, anything but that. Tony, I'm going to read you, speaking of terrible Bears takes, this tweet from Booger McFarland. It's way too early to talk draft. However, I'll say this. There are more NFL players in the SEC than any other conference. Bryce Young has dominated that conference. His size isn't the reason for Chicago not to take him. The reason is you think Justin Fields is better. Do you? Tony, professional football commentator Booger McFarland has spoken. Do you?
I I saw this, and to me, this is what I do. You've got Justin Fields. You've got the quarterback that you've wanted to draft. Yeah, but he hasn't looked good. He's looked good when he's looked spectacular at times. If you give him time to throw, which they have not done, which is why he had to rush for like 1,000 yards this year. You can package these. You can trade down, get picks. People want quarterbacks. Ohio State has a quarterback. To just go ahead and throw this quarterback out, I don't want to say I would be done with the Bears, because honestly, I've been done with the Bears for a long time. This actually brought me back in. But if you want a sure way to break a quarterback, play for the Bears and be like 5'11", 185 pounds. That'll break you. And so, yes, it is a reason not to draft him. For one, playing for the Bears, Justin Fields is like 6'3", 230, and he's, missed the last game of the season. So that's, first of all, I'm never going to agree with anything Booger says. That's line one of anything I've ever written. That's legally binding. But I still, it's really difficult to think, oh, Kevin Warren, I feel good about this hire, no matter what the hire would be.
Yeah, he, of all the people who have been hired for significant public-facing roles, which involve public speaking, might be one of the least compelling public speakers I've ever seen. Like the Big Ten Media Day speech every year was kind of like, you talked for a while. What did you actually say? Like, the only thing I really remember sticking out to me was in the 2021 Big Ten Media Days, when he was asked what he would do different with the 2020 season, with the version, with the benefit of hindsight. And he said, nothing. I would do it all the same. It's like, boy, we experienced that whole process and that whole year in very different ways, apparently, because remember when there was no people in the stadiums and you weren't going to play and you pushed everything back, and then you missed a bunch of your really important games because you didn't build any pad? And you remember, no lessons were learned. Okay, good. Well, go Bears.
I will mention. I won't mention who the text is from, but the text we just got here in one of our group texts. It's, I've always said the Bears are God's team, and now they're doing the Lord's work.
That is, yes, I got that one as well. I just looked down at 18 text messages in the last 5 minutes, so I'm sure we have some fine stuff to learn from. But yes, that I would, without announcing the author of that, co-sign. Yes,
I think Gene Smith should be an option as Big Ten commissioner, because he's kind of obviously running a big thing at Ohio State. I've heard people say like they're going to go the political route and go get a politician instead. So we'll see what happens there. It's an interesting time to be leaving the Big Ten for an NFL team. This seems like an incredible step down, even though I'm sure you're making more money, and it's I'd say it's an easier job. But to be leaving like an entity like the Big Ten for a place like the Bears, it feels like a step down, and it feels like somebody running away from a job to me.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the level of satisfaction with his job performance was, because it's, you can look at some of the objective metrics there. He works for the university presidents, the 14 university presidents of the Big Ten. So, 16, well, soon to be 16 university presidents of the Big Ten. I think that they've been, a bunch of good things, at least financially, have happened for the Big Ten under his tenure. And it's like, I don't know how much credit you want to give him for the fact that people in the Midwest really like football and have really liked football for 100 years. It's like, well, I mean, it happened under your watch. It's like a lot of the Jim Delaney stuff, where Jim Delaney made them a bunch of money on TV. But a lot of that was based on the fact that people in the Midwest really like football. Like if Jim Delaney was in the Pac-12, I don't think Jim Delaney or Kevin Warren was in the Pac-12. I don't think the Pac-12's TV deal would be significantly different than it was now. I don't think it was some magic that he worked to get networks to give them a bunch of money. It was just people in the Midwest watch a lot of football. and that has been true for a long time. And I think you also have had, in a lot of the stuff, the positive stuff that has happened is sort of positive stuff that would have happened with a whole lot of different people in charge. And a lot of the less positive stuff, like, hey, Rutgers and Maryland, they're still here. Or, hey, the 2020 season, remember when everyone played by really different rules and it left your conference at a substantial competitive disadvantage? That's stuff that, I don't think everyone would have made those decisions. And so I think you kind of have to weigh how much credit do they get for the positives that are sort of inherently built in, and how much blame do they get for the negatives that are not necessarily inherently built in. And Tony, I'm left with only one conclusion. Kevin Warren, a land of contrasts.
You're describing him as, anybody could have done this, anybody could have done that. And I'm thinking, oh, so he's the Stetson Bennett of commissioners. But then you said he also made poor decisions, and you're right.
Stop me if you disagree. But Sean Clifford, if Sean Clifford was the Big Ten commissioner for the last 5 years, the Big Ten still gets a pretty good TV deal.
Yes, and also he would be able to put a stop to this Big Ten anti-Penn State conspiracy. Perhaps.
Maybe. It goes pretty deep, Tony, as we have learned over the last 30 years or so.
I feel like getting back to Ohio State is now pointless, Tom. Do you have anything else you want to speak on?
Boy, this show getting weird and pointless and meandering. We are really breaking some new ground here in 2023. Yeah. I'll just pull up our rundown. I think we've kind of hit the big stuff. And, as you said, there are still a number of decisions to be announced, which I think we know sort of which direction a lot of those are leaning, but we'll see where things go. I think there are some of these decisions, there may be stuff going on behind the scenes and people trying to change people's minds in ways that are now legal. So, we'll see how all this sort of trends over the next few days, but we'll be back with the chance to talk about a whole bunch more of it in the coming days.
Indeed we will, Tom. Indeed we will, especially as stuff continues to break. And there's never an off season, as much as we wish there were. It's like June. June is the off season. I think we've said that before, but it's certainly not right now.
That's camp season. The off season is the first 3 weeks of July. That is the off season.
So we look forward to that as always. But thank you all for joining us. As always, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Say hello to us there on the message board. Also find us at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Go ahead and hit the bell to be notified. Hit the thumbs up on this one if you would like. Subscribe to that channel and get notified when we drop all kinds of videos like this one, live shows, interview sessions, things like that. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys later.